I've thought about creating this video for a little while, and I'm going to be very, very frank and public about all sorts of matters having to do with health and bodies and aging, those sorts of things. And the reason I'm doing this is because I've had quite a few people reach out to me and express, care and concern and well wishes, sometimes giving unwanted advice. By the way, don't give any advice. I'm not looking for that. And the reason they're doing that is because I'm very public about, what I'm going through and, like when I had COVID and different other things that I'm experiencing when it comes to aging and health in YouTube, in my social media. And so I get a lot of people who are interested and, oftentimes expressing their own sympathy or commiserating or things like that. And people sometimes want to know, well, hey, what's going on? So I thought I would do a video about that because I've been thinking a lot about it lately as I've been going through, let's say, more challenges than usual in the last several months. And people also say, well, how do you keep a positive mindset and get things done? And the answer is, how do I do it? Well, more or less consistently, but sometimes not at all. And so I'll tell you a bit about that in just a moment. But let me tell you what's been going on. This last year has probably been a bit rougher than years before because I am getting older. I turned 53 this year. I've had a number of different matters that have had to be addressed, some of which are still kind of pending. And if we back up about a year and a half, I had COVID. That kind of threw things for a loop. It, has some long-term effects on some people's immune systems, fatigue, those sorts of matters. But, my body is also getting older. It's a year older than it was last year in 2020. I'm not in my 20s, my 30s, even my 40s anymore, and things are gradually wearing out and winding down, and in some respects that's to be expected. So, I've had some injuries in the past that are eventually going to have to be addressed. I tore 2 ligaments in my left knee way back in my 40s when I was living in Kingston. I think it's more than 10 years since then, and my muscles have compensated for it, but things are kind of wearing out. Eventually I'll have to have that knee replaced, most likely. The other knee has to compensate for it. Some things are genetic. I think I lucked out more or less in a lot of gene stuff. We tend to keep our teeth, we tend to keep our hair, but, there are some other things genetically that I'm at a greater risk for. And so let me talk about one of those that's kind of a complicating factor. So I've been diabetic with type 2 diabetes for quite a while. And, I could control my blood sugar adequately for a while with attention to diet, curtailing eating certain things, cutting back on sugars and getting exercise. And this year it kind of came to a head. And I come from a line of people who do have diabetes on my mother's side. My mother was diabetic, a lot of other people in the family. So it's one of those things you just kind of have to watch. Obviously, being overweight was a factor, but many other things are as well. And, when blood sugar is out of whack, you're more tired easily, you're more susceptible to infections of different sorts. And, we were trying different things and fairly unsuccessful. And over this last year, it kind of came to a head. And eventually I went on medication for it, and that has been helping out quite a bit, but it's still something I have to keep an eye on, and no doubt it does take a toll to some degree. Reducing stress, getting good sleep, staying hydrated, eating the right things, getting consistent exercise, all of those are very important for that. COVID is not good for diabetes or diabetics, so that probably played a role as well. I've had some, various illnesses over the years, some sinus infections. I actually had what was most likely a staph infection that I had to take antibiotics for. I was on some pretty high-powered antibiotics for quite a while, and that kind of messes with you as well. It wears you down, you got the whole gut health thing going on. And recently, the biggest challenge has been that, it's been about close to 2 months now, I started feeling this pain, consistent pain in my side, and after about a week and a half of that, my wife was like, you better go to the doctor and get this checked out. So I did, and they were like, oh, that sounds like gallbladder issues. Very common for people in America. It's actually one of the most common surgeries to take the gallbladder out, and I know a lot of people that have had it out. And so they sent me to get it checked out, get a scan of it, an ultrasound first, and they found that I had some stones and what they call sludge, so, it's not working 100%. And then, they said if anything changes in pain level or stuff like that, then make sure that you go to urgent care or the ER. It did one day. I had to cancel my night class, went in. It was kind of itchy and pain level had increased. They did another scan, and the guy said, well, you need to get it out. Sooner or later, it's got to come out. And I was like, oh, okay, Then I already had lined up a surgical consult, and I'm not going to go into great detail about that. Suffice it to say, the guy that I was scheduled to see was not a people person, and we didn't really see eye to eye in the consult itself. And I was okay with that because I don't really care too much about personalities when it comes to those sorts of matters. But he actually misreported things that I'd told him in his notes. And so that tells me that he's not paying great attention to detail. We looked later and not a lot of good reviews. So I have another consult scheduled with somebody who's got great reviews, end of November, and eventually, it'll get resolved one way or the other. And, you can change your diet a bit, eliminate fried foods and things that aggravate it, but there's not that much you can do. So I've been in more or less constant low-grade pain for now about 5-6 weeks. And, that's no fun. It kind of tires you out. It saps you. It also kind of messes with your pancreas, so I get some pain on the other side. And, overall it places stress on your system. So, all these things kind of work hand in hand, or don't work hand in hand, you might say, right? They exacerbate each other. Recently, I've started having pain up here, and I went in to have that checked out, and they said, well, it's inflammation of the cartilage in your ribs. And, as it turns out, I injured that area about close to 15 years ago. I bruised a rib a long time ago. So that's probably what's going on. And, this is all manageable with some, over-the-counter medications for pain relief. But it takes a toll on you over a while. And it's a constant reminder that your body is aging. The other thing that's been going on, which is kind of a good thing, but also, not so great, ever since COVID, I've had some pains like every single day, waking me up generally in my legs, generally in my knees, my quads, my hamstrings, and what are called the IT band. And, I stretch and I do various exercises, and it helps out a bit. So I went to PT, physical therapy, and the physical therapist gave me some things to do, and they're helping a bit, but it's still pain. But all of this is kind of low grade stuff, except when it isn't, and that's not all that common. But it's a constant challenge to deal with, and so there's kind of some circular effects we could say on this. And what I mean by circular is the things that would actually make it better get a little bit harder to do when you're dealing with these sorts of things. So it takes more effort, more discipline to stay on track. All of it makes me more easily tired. Sometimes I get hit with just like a wall of fatigue. That was something that was happening to me after COVID, and it wasn't bad for a while, but with the pain, sometimes I'm, bushed by 8 o'clock at night, which normally wouldn't be the case for me. Usually I'm up until, about 11 o'clock, oftentimes working, but I don't think I could keep up that pace quite anymore. The biggest issue is that it becomes harder to do exercise consistently. I'd love to get to the gym 3 days a week and lift weights and then do other stuff on the other days, but it doesn't always happen. Part of it is due to my schedule. I'm teaching a lot of classes, and they're at times that are kind of inconvenient for working out because the gym closes ever since COVID and reopening. It closes earlier as well. So there's that going on. But I still do get, some exercise in, so that's good. I have fallen behind over time on various work, on projects that I've got, on correspondence. I'm quite far behind in my correspondence from the last several weeks because of busyness and classes, but also because of dealing with all this medical stuff, the gallbladder issues, the other pain issues and things like that. And so, a lot of people, when they go through setbacks like this, they can wind up getting dismayed, despondent, even depressed. And I'm somebody who's, suffered from depression in the past. I'm fortunate in that I was able to get off of antidepressants in part through, developing better perspective, through applying philosophy, particularly Stoic and Aristotelian and Platonic philosophy and some other things, and doing what we call exercises, but also other ways of improving my life and therefore my mood. And it's understandable when you get sick, or if you're dealing with like chronic pain or conditions that are just not going to get better, that you feel some despair or sadness or even grief, grief for what you could do and can't do anymore, pain, of course, irritability, all of those sort of things. And those make it harder for you to, carry out and conduct the things that are important for your life, maintain relationships, get your work done, all of those sorts of matters. But, what I do is I remind myself that, okay, I didn't get everything done that I wanted to do, and I'm behind on some things. And some of the things that I have been doing, I didn't do to the absolute best of my, high-performing ability that I've been known for in the past. But I did accomplish some things. This year, this academic year, or this rather calendar year, I have taught 7 courses at Marquette. Actually, it might be 8. And it's 8 for each semester, Marquette and Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. I'm not doing the best, but I'm still probably in the 75th percentile as far as like quality and getting things accomplished. I also taught an online class that people participated on through the Study with Sadler Academy. I gave a lot of talks. Some of them online, some of them in person. Most recently, I gave a talk at the International Stoicon Conference, and that's kind of a cool thing for me to do. I did also finish a massive project that I've been working on for almost 10 years called Half Hour Hegel that ended up being over 370 commentary videos, and I saw that through and brought that to a successful close. I started volunteering at Almost Home Cat Shelter, which required me to do, not just show up and start doing that, but to go through training, both online and in person. And I've been, going there. I've also been helping out with grants for them as well. And I've also been making sure that I get to spend time, not just at home, but, doing things out and about with my wife and my kids and, friends and colleagues and family members when I get to see them. So all of that is, it's not nothing, and it's way more than nothing. And I remind myself of that. And if you're struggling with similar stuff, you can remind yourself that you didn't just do nothing. You did what you were capable of doing. And it might not have been what you were capable of doing 10 years ago, or even a year ago, or a month ago. But that doesn't mean that it's valueless or no good or just not up to standards or something like that. And it's important to, I think, remind yourself of that. So I've been, doing that. My wife is very helpful because she also helps to remind me of that as well. And I do that for her occasionally. Probably she does that more than I do. And so this leads to thinking about some useful reminders. And so these are the things that I remind myself of every so often, and they could be helpful for you if you're struggling with similar circumstances, or maybe they'll be helpful for you down the line if you're nice and you got a nice young body that's more or less chugging along, doing just fine. Well, give it 10, 20, 30 years, and maybe this will be helpful for you. So, one of the things that I've actually found is it's very basic, that is quite helpful to remind yourself of. This comes, officially from Stoicism, where it's called the dichotomy of control in modern Stoicism. There's no actual name for it in ancient Stoicism. It's a preconception, a prolepsis that Epictetus talks about. What is up to us? What is not up to us? What we control, what we don't control, what we have some contribution to, what we can at best just influence. And our body, the Stoics remind us, is one of those things. You can be as fit as you like and eat, completely healthy and get hit by the bus tomorrow or die of a heart attack, like that famous runner back, I think, in the 70s or 80s who was like, the super guy and keeled over. Well, he was mid-jog, right? You don't control your genetics. You don't control the environment to any great extent that you're living in. You can try to set up your schedule so that you can exercise, so you get decent sleep. You can try to eat healthy as much as you can in our environment, where we're constantly bombarded with advertisement for unhealthy food, and you got to kind of like think a lot to figure out what actually isn't full of stuff that's bad for you in the food that we can buy. You can do all that stuff, but ultimately all you're doing is, the best that you can do with what's not in your control. Doesn't mean you should just say, oh, well, screw it then. Nothing I can do about this, because, we're given our bodies to live in as long as we can. So, that's important. I've also found it very helpful personally to think about other people like myself. So we're thinking about other public scholars who at certain points in time, because of health reasons or family reasons or whatever it was, had to step back a bit. And they still did some of their work, but they said, well, I just can't do this over here. And, I could give you plenty of examples. I'll just give you one, Alistair McIntyre, who, had committed to leading the Erasmus Institute faculty seminar. That's how I met him and became, colleagues and friends, and got to know what kind of person he was. And he was in, kind of rough health, and he was kind of keeping it to himself, but he couldn't do all the things that he wanted to do with us in the seminar that he would have done were he feeling better. And down the line, he was feeling better, right? And then he went back to doing the kinds of stuff that he did. He didn't stop working altogether, but he pared back. And so, I think about examples like that, and I'm like, well, if it's good enough for him, somebody who I greatly admire and emulate, well, that's good enough for me over here as well. And I think it's also important to keep in mind something I've already talked about a little bit, that not being able to do everything doesn't mean that you're not doing anything. Even if all you can do is just one thing, like send one email a day, that's something. It's not nothing. And it's not crap by comparison to what you were able to do in the past, because it's relative to what our capacities, what our, what we can do before we get too tired or too distracted by pain or whatever it happens to be, what it is that we're able to do in the moment. That's good. If we can do something, obviously it's, if you've made some commitments and you can't follow through on them, that doesn't feel good. That kind of sucks, right? And it sucks for the people that you committed to, but that's what happens sometimes. And it doesn't mean that you become a bad person or you're lazy or not measuring up to your potential or whatever other people might say about you. You know what you're capable of. And so long as you don't even have to put in 100% effort every day. So long as you can put in 80%, I think that's good. Consistent 80% effort beats idealistic 100% effort that's unsustainable any day. I also think it's important to maintain a realistic perspective about health and your body. Don't be a perfectionist about health. You need to have a degree of health that will let you accomplish the things that you want to do within reason, right? And your body, you're not going to reverse aging. You're not going to reverse whatever crazy damage you did to it in your teens and 20s, doing stupid things, right? Hearing loss in my case. I've been living with tinnitus for, however it's pronounced, tinnitus or something like that, for decades because I was stupid when I was young. And when I was in the Army, we blew stuff up and we didn't put our hearing protection in. We shot our, rifles and, worked with loud machinery. And I went to concerts where, speakers are right in your ears. And I listened to loud music with my headphones on. No changing that, right? Not going to fix that. You got to live with it. And so, maintaining a realistic perspective, I think, can be quite helpful. And then, making sure that you look at rest and relaxation and whatever counts as rejuvenation for yourself, not just as something that you let yourself have after you've been good and you've done all your work for the day, and not just as something kind of negative because you're not doing stuff, but as a positive good. And this is where I think ancient philosophy can be quite helpful, because instead of saying we got to be productive all the time, they recognize that rest and enjoyment and relaxation are part of the good life. And so, those of us who are very driven, those of us who've developed habits of productivity, and you might say mindsets of it, sometimes we got to do some reminding ourselves that it can be okay to take a nap or read a book that you're not going to be doing a video or a book review or whatever on, or teaching. That we do need to, as they say, smell the flowers and sometimes just look at the flowers for 5 minutes of dead time. What Rilke called solitude, in his letters to a young poet. So anyway, those are my reflections. That's what's going on with me. If this is helpful for you, that's great. If it's just kind of entertaining, that's good too. If you have any thoughts or something like that, not medical advice, because I'm not looking for that, especially from people who don't actually know me. But anything else, go ahead and leave it in the comments, and we can, see where things go from there.